Years continued to pass. Faces at the center changed. Some stayed. Some moved on. That was the way it was meant to be. The man aged too. Lines appeared around his eyes. His hair showed signs of gray. He welcomed it. Each mark felt earned. One quiet morning, the nanny struggled to stand. It was not dramatic. Just a small moment that carried weight. He helped her sit. "It's okay," she said softly. "This happens." He stayed calm on the outside, even as his chest tightened. From that day on, he adjusted everything again. Fewer late nights. More shared meals. More time sitting together in silence. They spoke about memories. About moments they never talked about before. About the boy he had been and the woman she had chosen to be. "I never planned to change your life." She said once, "I know," he replied. "That's why you did." One evening, as the sun dipped low, she said something that stayed with him. "Promise me something." She said, "Anything," he answered. "Don't let gratitude turn into guilt. You don't owe me your life. Just live it well." He nodded, unable to speak for a moment. The center continued. The work continued. Life continued. People sometimes asked him how it all began. He never gave a long answer. "I stayed because someone stayed with me." He would say that was enough. And in quiet ways. Without announcements or applause, the world around him kept changing, one person choosing to stay. One moment at a time. The change did not come suddenly. It came the way most important things do, quietly and without warning. One day felt like every other day, and then it didn't. The man noticed it in small moments. The nanny would pause longer before standing. She would forget where she placed her glasses. She laughed it off, but he saw it. He always did. He adjusted again. Life had taught him how. He moved meetings to earlier hours. He asked others to take more responsibility at the center. Not because he was stepping away, but because he knew the work had to live beyond him. People understood. They had grown alongside him. Many of them had once needed guidance themselves. Now they offered it to others. The nanny spent more time by the window. She liked watching people come and go. Children laughing. Adults talking. Life continuing. "This place grew," she said one afternoon, "and you let it." He smiled. "You taught me not to hold too tight." Some evenings they sat together without speaking. Silence no longer felt empty. It felt full of shared history. The man often thought about the boy he once was. He wondered what that child would think if he could see this life now. The calm, the purpose, the quiet respect. He believed the boy would feel safe. Letters still arrived. Fewer now, but deeper. One came from a young adult who had once spent hours sitting silently at the center. The letter spoke of a new job, a small home, a sense of direction. "I stayed because you stayed," the letter said. The man folded it carefully and placed it in the box with the others. One morning, the nanny did not wake at her usual time. There was no panic, only a deep knowing. He sat beside her bed and held her hand. She opened her eyes slowly. "I'm here," he said. "I know," she whispered. They did not talk much that day. Words felt unnecessary. In the days that followed, neighbors brought food. People from the center stopped by quietly. No one stayed too long. Everyone understood the weight of the moment. The nanny spoke less. But when she did, her words were clear. "Promise me," she said once more. "You won't disappear into grief." He nodded. Tears held back by years of learning how to be strong without becoming hard. "I won't," he said. "I learned that from you too." When she finally slept and did not wake again, the room felt still. Not empty. Just still. The man did not rush anything. He sat. He breathed. He remembered the service was simple. No long speeches. No attention-seeking words. People shared quiet memories. Small kindnesses. Moments when she had stayed when others walked away. The town she once left long ago sent a small message. A card with simple words. She helped raise someone who changed lives. That was enough. Grief did not break him. It moved through him. Some days were heavy. Others were calm. He returned to the center when he was ready. People welcomed him without pressure. They followed his lead. He placed a chair by the window where the nanny used to sit. It stayed empty, but it did not feel lonely. He spoke to new arrivals the same way he always had. "I'm glad you came," he would say. Life continued. Years later, someone asked him if he ever wished things had been different. He thought carefully before answering. "No," he said, "because then I might not have learned how powerful it is to stay." The story of the boy who left and the man who returned did not end with sadness. It continued in every person who chose patience over judgment, and though the nanny was no longer beside him, her presence lived on in every quiet act of care. The man understood now more than ever. Some people change everything not by being loud, but by staying. Life after loss teaches lessons no one asks for. The man learned them slowly, one quiet morning at a time. After the nanny was gone, the house felt larger, even though nothing had changed. Her chair by the window stayed where it was. He did not move it. Some spaces deserved to remain untouched. He continued waking early. Routine gave shape to days that could otherwise blur together. He made tea the same way she once did. He opened the curtains at the same hour. These small habits did not trap him in the past. They helped him carry it gently. The center remained active. People still arrived with nervous faces and hopeful eyes. The man welcomed them with the same calm tone. Grief had softened him further. He listened with deeper patience now, because he understood how fragile people could be. There were days when memories came without warning. A phrase she used, a way she smiled. In those moments, he allowed himself to feel everything. He had learned that strength did not mean hiding pain. It meant walking with it. One afternoon, a young volunteer asked him how he managed to keep going. "I don't," he answered honestly. "I just don't stop." The volunteer nodded, understanding more than words could explain. Time passed, as it always does. Seasons changed. The center grew quieter in winter and lively again in spring. New faces replaced old ones. Stories changed, but the needs stayed the same. The man began writing letters of his own, not for sending, just for remembering. He wrote about the boy he was, about the woman who stayed, about the town that once let him go and later welcomed him back. Writing helped him see the full shape of his life, not as a straight line, but as a circle. One year, an invitation arrived from the old town. They planned a small gathering at the school. Nothing formal, just a moment to acknowledge how far things had come. He hesitated before replying. He did not fear the place anymore, but he respected what it held. In the end, he agreed to go. When he arrived, the town felt familiar and distant at the same time. Streets had changed again. New shops stood where old ones once were, but the air still carried the same quiet rhythm. People greeted him warmly, not with awe, but with ease. Children ran past him, laughing. He smiled at the sound. Inside the school, he stood in a classroom filled with light. He spoke simply. "I didn't come here because I had answers," he said. "I came because someone once believed I was worth staying for." He spoke about listening, about patience, about how one steady presence can change a life. No one applauded loudly. They did not need to. Before leaving, he walked once more past the old house. It belonged to another family now. Lights glowed warmly through the windows. He felt no sadness, only acceptance. Back home, life continued with quiet purpose. The man grew older. His hair turned fully gray. His steps slowed, but his eyes stayed kind. The center no longer needed him every day. Others had learned how to carry it forward. That had always been the goal. He spent more time teaching, less time leading. More time listening, less time speaking. One evening, sitting alone by the window, he thought about how the story began. A boy leaving a town. A woman choosing to stay. He understood now that some people enter our lives for a reason that echoes far beyond time. When people asked about his past, he shared only what mattered. "Someone stayed with me," he would say. "So I stayed with others." That was the truth. In the end, his life was not measured by success or recognition. It was measured by quiet moments, by lives that felt less alone because he did not walk away. And somewhere, in ways unseen, the lesson continued. Stay. Sometimes that is enough. The years that followed did not bring big surprises. They brought something better. They brought steadiness. The man woke up each morning without urgency. His life no longer felt like it was chasing something or running from anything. He moved with intention. When he spoke, people listened, not because he demanded attention, but because his words came from experience. The center still stood, though it looked different now. New faces ran it day to day. New ideas shaped its future. The man visited often, but he did not lead anymore. He sat in the back, listening, smiling when he saw patience being passed from one person to another. Sometimes someone new would approach him quietly. "Are you the one who started this?" they would ask. He always shook his head. "No," he said. "I'm just someone who stayed long enough to see it grow." That answer confused some people. It comforted others. At home, life was simple. He cooked for himself. He kept the house clean. He still left the chair by the window where it had always been. Dust gathered there sometimes. He wiped it away gently, like a habit of respect. The boy was only 8 years old when the town slowly decided he no longer belonged to it. No one said it out loud, but everyone felt it. His house sat at the edge of a narrow road, paint fading, fence leaning, windows always half shut. People passed by every day, yet very few truly saw what was happening inside. He lived with his father, a quiet man who once had strong hands and louder laughter. After the boy's mother passed away, those hands grew tired, and the laughter disappeared. Grief did not arrive loudly in that house. It came in small ways and finished meals, long silences, bills stacked on the table, nights where the lights stayed off to save money. The boy noticed everything, even when no one explained it to him. He learned early not to ask for new shoes when the old ones tore. He learned not to complain when dinner was thin. He learned to sit still when his father stared at the wall. Lost in thoughts he never shared. The only warmth in that home came from the woman who arrived each morning before sunrise. She was hired to help after the mother died, but she became much more than that. She cooked, cleaned, and watched over the boy, but most importantly, she listened. When the boy spoke, she did not rush him. When he cried, she did not tell him to be strong too soon. She braided his hair when his hands shook too much to do it himself. She walked him to school, even when neighbors whispered. She stayed late into the night when his father came home tired and empty-eyed. Over time, the boy began to trust her in a way he trusted no one else. At school, the boy was quiet. Other children laughed easily, but he stayed near the back, hands folded, eyes lowered. Some kids teased him for his worn clothes. Others ignored him. Teachers saw his potential, but also saw the sadness that clung to him like a shadow. The nanny noticed everything. She noticed how he flinched when voices rose. She noticed how he kept his bag packed neatly, as if ready to leave at any moment. She noticed how he smiled only when she praised him, not when others did. The town, meanwhile, had already formed its own story. People talked at shops, at bus stops, over fences. They said the father was failing. They said the boy would not turn out well. They said the house would be empty soon. Money became tighter. The father began working longer hours for less pay. Some nights, he did not come home until after the boy was asleep. Other nights he came home early and sat in silence, staring at the floor. One evening, the nanny overheard a phone call. She did not mean to listen, but the walls were thin. The father's voice trembled as he spoke to a relative from another city. Words like temporary, just until things improve, and he deserves better floated through the air. That night, the boy sensed something was wrong. He sat on his bed holding a small toy he had owned since he was little. When the nanny came to tuck him in, he asked a simple question. "Am I going somewhere?" She froze for a moment. She did not lie. She also did not tell him everything. "Some people think it might help," she said softly. The boy nodded, though his chest felt tight. Children often understand more than adults believe. He did not cry. He just held the toy closer. Days later, the father finally spoke. His voice broke as he explained that the boy would stay with relatives for a while. They had more space, better schools, more stability. "It's not goodbye," the father said, though his eyes said otherwise. The boy looked at the nanny. She was standing in the doorway, hands folded, eyes filled with worry. He trusted her face more than anyone else's words. The town reacted quickly. Some said it was the right choice. Others shook their heads. Very few asked how the boy felt. Packing happened quietly. Clothes were folded carefully. Books were placed neatly into a small suitcase. The nanny packed his favorite snacks, even though no one asked her to. On the morning of the departure, the air felt heavier than usual. The car waited outside. Neighbors watched from windows. Some pretended not to notice. The boy hugged his father tightly. The hug lasted longer than expected. Neither wanted to let go. Then something unexpected happened. The nanny stepped forward and placed her hand on the suitcase. She looked at the father, her voice steady but firm. "I'm going with him," she said. The father looked stunned. This was not discussed. This was not planned. "I can't leave him alone," she continued. "Not now." Silence followed. The father looked at his son, then back at her. He saw the bond that had formed, stronger than words. After a long pause, he nodded. The car drove away slowly. Dust rose behind it. The boy looked back through the window, watching his home shrink until it disappeared. No letters came after that. Weeks passed, then months, then years. The town filled the silence with guesses. Some said the nanny took advantage. Some said the boy was better off gone. Others simply forgot. The house was eventually sold. New people moved in. The old story faded, but somewhere far away the boy was growing, learning, and healing. And the woman beside him made sure he never forgot where he came from, even if the town believed they would never see him again. The new city felt louder than anything the boy had ever known. Cars moved faster. People walked with purpose. Buildings stood taller, blocking the sky he was used to seeing every morning. As the car stopped in front of a large house, the boy felt his stomach tighten. This place did not feel like home. It felt like somewhere he was borrowing space. The relatives welcomed him politely, but there was distance in their smiles. They had agreed to help, but they had not prepared their hearts. The boy noticed it right away. He kept his voice low and his movements small, trying not to take up too much space. The nanny stayed close. She unpacked his clothes herself, placing them neatly into a small cupboard. She hung his jacket where he could reach it. She set his books beside the bed. Small actions, but they meant everything to him. The first night was the hardest. The house was quiet, but not the comforting kind of quiet. It was unfamiliar. The boy lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying his last moments with his father. The nanny sat on a chair beside his bed until he fell asleep, just as she had done back home. School started quickly. New teachers, new faces, new rules. The boy felt invisible in crowded classrooms. When teachers called his name, his voice came out soft and unsure. Some students were curious. Others were cruel. A few laughed when they noticed his old shoes or his careful way of speaking. The nanny listened every afternoon as he shared his day. She never interrupted. She never dismissed his feelings. When he struggled with homework, she sat beside him patiently. When he failed a test, she reminded him that learning takes time. The relatives watched from a distance. At first, they questioned why the nanny was still there. They whispered about money and responsibility. They wondered how long this arrangement would last, but weeks turned into months. And the boy began to change. He started waking up earlier. He finished his homework without being asked. He helped with chores even when his hands were tired. The sadness in his eyes did not disappear, but it softened. The nanny encouraged him to join activities at school. He resisted at first, afraid of being laughed at again. Slowly, with her gentle push, he joined a reading group, then a small sports club. He was not the best, but he showed effort, and effort earned respect. Letters from his father came less often than expected. At first, they arrived every few weeks. Then every few months, The words were loving but short. The boy read each letter many times, folding them carefully and keeping them safe. The nanny noticed the gaps between letters. She never spoke badly of the father. Instead, she reminded the boy that adults sometimes struggle to show love the right way. Money was always tight. The nanny worked extra hours when she could. She skipped meals without complaining. When the boy noticed, she smiled and said she was not hungry. One evening, after a long day, the boy asked a question he had been holding inside for months. "Why are you still here with me?" The nanny paused. She looked at him for a long moment. "Because someone once stayed with me when I needed it," she said simply. That answer stayed with him. Years passed quietly. The boy grew taller. His voice changed. His shoulders straightened. Teachers began to praise his focus. Neighbors started greeting him with respect. The relatives grew used to the arrangement. They saw the discipline the nanny brought into his life. They saw how he listened to her more than anyone else. Slowly, their doubts faded. But the town he came from moved on without him. Back there, people stopped mentioning his name. Children he once knew grew up. Streets were repaired. Shops closed and reopened. His old house changed owners twice. Sometimes, when the nanny thought the boy was asleep, she sat quietly with old photos. She never showed them to him, but she kept them close. The boy, meanwhile, made a silent promise to himself. He would not waste this second chance. He studied harder. He worked part-time jobs as he got older. He learned how to carry responsibility without bitterness. There were moments of anger. Moments when he wondered why he had to grow up faster than others. In those moments, the nanny reminded him that pain could either break him or build him. He chose to let it build him as he stepped into adulthood. People saw him as calm and steady. They did not know the weight he carried or the nights he once cried quietly into his pillow. One evening, as they shared a simple meal, the boy, now a young man, looked at the nanny. "Someday," he said. "I want to go back," she nodded, as if she had been waiting for him to say it. Neither of them knew when that day would come. But both understood one thing clearly. The past was not finished with them yet. Life moved forward quietly, one day at a time. The boy was no longer a boy. He had become a man without realizing when the change happened. There was no single moment that marked it. It came through responsibility, through early mornings and late nights. Through choosing patience when anger felt easier, he finished his studies with steady focus. He was not loud about his success, but people noticed. Teachers spoke well of him. Employers trusted him. He never forgot where he came from, and that memory kept his feet on the ground. The nanny grew older beside him. Her hair slowly turned gray. Her steps became slower, but her presence remained strong. She never asked for recognition. She never reminded him of what she had sacrificed. She simply stayed. They moved into a smaller place once he started earning. It was modest but clean. He insisted she no longer work long hours. She protested at first, but he stood firm. "It's my turn now," he said. She smiled but said nothing. There were nights when he lay awake thinking about the past, about his father, about the house at the edge of the road, about the people who had watched him leave without asking where he was going. He did not feel hatred. What he felt was unfinished. The first call from his father came after many years of silence. The voice on the other end sounded older, weaker. "I heard you're doing well," the father said. The man closed his eyes. He did not know how to answer. They spoke briefly, awkwardly. When the call ended, he sat in silence for a long time. The nanny did not push him. She only placed a cup of tea beside him and sat down. He reached out, she said gently. "That means something." "I don't know what it means," he replied. Neither of them forced the conversation. Months later, an unexpected letter arrived. It was not from his father. It was from someone in the old town. The letter was short, written carefully, filled with curiosity. People were asking about him. The letter spoke of changes, of familiar places that no longer looked the same, of neighbors who remembered him only vaguely. That night, the man made a decision he had been carrying inside for years. He would go back. not to prove anything, not to demand answers, but to face what he left behind. The nanny listened as he explained. She did not look surprised. "I'll come with you," she said. He shook his head at first. "You've already done enough," he said. She met his eyes. "Didn't raise you to walk alone," she replied. "Preparation took time." He arranged his work. He saved money. He planned carefully. This was not a rushed return. It was a thoughtful one. When the day finally came, they packed lightly. The same way they had left years ago, but this time with purpose. The road back felt shorter than he remembered. Or maybe he had grown stronger. As they approached the town, memories surfaced. The streets felt narrower, the buildings smaller. Time had moved on, but the air felt familiar. They stopped near the old neighborhood. He stepped out of the car slowly, taking it all in. The house he once lived in stood there, painted a different color. Children played in the yard where he once sat alone. People passed by without recognizing him. That did not bother him. Word spread quietly. Someone saw him. Someone whispered. Someone asked questions. By evening, a few familiar faces appeared. Older now, wiser, curious. Some greeted him kindly. Others kept their distance. The nanny stayed close, her presence calm and steady. When he finally stood in the center of the town, the weight of the past lifted slightly. He realized something important. He did not need their approval. He had already survived. And this return was only the beginning of something none of them expected. The morning after his return, the town felt different, even though nothing had changed on the surface. Shops opened the same way. People walked the same roads, but there was a quiet awareness moving through the streets. The boy who left years ago was back, and no one knew exactly why. He woke early, as he always did. The place they were staying was small and simple, but clean. The nanny was already awake, sitting near the window with a cup of tea. She looked peaceful, but he could tell she was thinking. "Are you nervous?" he asked. She smiled softly. "A little, but more curious." They stepped outside together. The air carried the smell of dust and morning bread from a nearby shop. He breathed it in slowly. This place had shaped his first memories. Now he was seeing it with different eyes. People noticed him more clearly in daylight. Some stared openly. Others tried not to. A few smiled in surprise. One older man stopped him, near the market. He studied his face carefully before speaking. "You look like someone I used to know," he said. "I might be," he replied politely. The man nodded, as if confirming something to himself. "You grew up well." That simple sentence stayed with him longer than expected. As the day passed, more conversations happened. Short ones. Careful ones. People asked where he had been, what he did now, how long he planned to stay. He answered honestly but briefly. He did not share details unless asked. He did not brag. He did not explain himself. Some people expected anger. Others expected pride. They found neither. The nanny walked beside him, greeting familiar faces with gentle nods. A few people recognized her and looked surprised. "You came back too," one woman said quietly. "I never really left," the nanny replied. Word eventually reached his father. The meeting did not happen right away. Both needed time. When it finally did, it was simple. No dramatic words. No raised voices. They sat across from each other in a quiet place. The father looked smaller than he remembered. Older, tired, didn't know how to be what you needed, the father said after a long silence. "I know," the man replied. That was all. That needed to be said. They talked about small things, work, health, time. When they parted, there were no promises, but there was peace. Over the next few days, the man began doing things no one expected. He visited the school he once attended and donated supplies quietly. He helped fix an old fence for a neighbor without being asked. He listened more than he spoke. People began to talk again, but this time differently. They spoke about how calm he was, how respectful, How the nanny stayed at his side like family. Someone asked him once why he returned. To give thanks. He said simply, "And to whom?" They asked. He looked at the nanny. "To the one who stayed." The town slowly began to change its tone. Where there had once been judgment, there was now reflection. Where there had been silence, there were conversations. Children watched him with curiosity. Adults watched him with thoughtfulness. The nanny, who had once been invisible, was now seen. People greeted her with respect. Some even apologized quietly, without excuses. One evening, as the sun set, the man stood in the same place where he once said goodbye as a child. The memory no longer hurt. He realized then that his return was not. It's about reopening wounds. It was about closing them. And the town, whether it realized it or not, was healing too. The days that followed felt calmer, almost lighter. The town had accepted his return, not with celebration, but with understanding. People no longer whispered when he passed. They greeted him the way they greet someone who belongs. He did not rush anything. Each morning he walked the streets slowly, stopping where memories surfaced. He stood outside the old school, watching children run and laugh. He sat near the small shop where his father once bought bread. These places no longer hurt him. They reminded him how far he had come. The nanny watched quietly. She noticed how his shoulders no longer carried the same weight, how his steps were steady, how his eyes held peace. One afternoon, a small gathering formed without planning. Neighbors brought chairs. Someone offered tea. No speeches were made. People simply sat together, sharing stories of the past. Some laughed. Some grew quiet. One woman spoke about how she once judged the family without knowing the truth. Another admitted she should have helped more. No one argued. No one defended themselves. The man listened, not as someone seeking apologies, but as someone ready to let go. When they asked him to speak, he stood slowly. "I didn't come back to change the past," he said. "I came back because it shaped me, and I wanted to thank the people who helped me survive it." He turned to the nanny. "She never had to stay," he continued, "but she did. She gave me safety when I had none. Direction when I was lost." The nanny lowered her head, embarrassed by the attention. That moment stayed with the town long after the chairs were put away. Before leaving, the man made quiet arrangements. He helped fund repairs for the school. He supported a small program to help children who struggled at home. He asked for no recognition when people thanked him. He reminded them that kindness grows when it is shared, not announced. The final visit was to his father. They sat together again, more comfortably this time. They spoke about ordinary things. When it was time to leave, the father placed his hand on his son's shoulder. "I'm proud of you," he said. The words were late, but they mattered. The day they left, the town watched openly. No one pretended not to notice this time. The car moved slowly down the road. The man looked back once, then forward. He was no longer the boy who was sent away. He was someone who had returned, healed and chosen peace. The nanny sat beside him, just as she always had, and long after they were gone. The town remembered not the child who disappeared, but the man who came back and changed everything simply by being who he became. Life after leaving the town did not rush forward. It moved slowly, the way healing often does. The road stretched ahead, quiet and open. The man drove with calm hands, eyes focused. The nanny sat beside him, looking out the window, watching the land change. Neither of them spoke for a long time. There was no need. Some moments feel complete without words. When they reached their home city, familiar streets welcomed them back. Neighbors waved. The small apartment felt warm and safe. Everything was where it should be. The man returned to his routine. Work filled his days again, but something inside him had shifted. He was lighter, more patient. He listened more carefully to people around him. The nanny noticed the change first. He smiled more easily. He slept better. Old worries no longer followed him into the night. One evening, as they shared a simple meal, she spoke. "You closed a door," she said. He nodded. "I think so. The doors closing often open others," she added. Those words stayed with him. Weeks later, an unexpected message arrived. A teacher from the old town had heard about the school support he arranged. She wanted advice. She wanted help building something lasting. The man read the message twice. He did not feel pressure. He felt purpose. He replied carefully, offering guidance, not control. Soon, others reached out. Quietly, respectfully, he began spending evenings planning ways to help from a distance. Scholarships, mentorship, simple support for children who felt unseen. The nanny watched with pride, though she never said it aloud. One afternoon, the man came home with a thoughtful expression. "I've been thinking," he said, "about kids who grow up without someone steady." She understood immediately. "You want to be that person?" she said. "I want to try," he replied. They talked late into the night. About responsibility, about patience, about giving without expecting anything back. Months passed. The work grew slowly, quietly. He never shared his story unless asked. He focused on listening to others. Sometimes letters arrived from the town. Short updates, thank yous, photos of repaired classrooms, smiling children. He kept them in a small box. The nanny's health began to slow her. Small signs at first. Tired steps. Longer rests. He adjusted everything around her without complaint. "You took care of me," she reminded him gently. "It's my turn," he answered. On calm evenings, they sat together, watching the sky change colors. Silence felt comfortable one night. She said something he would never forget. "You became who you are because you chose kindness again and again." He shook his head. "Because someone showed me how." Life did not become perfect. There were challenges, losses, unanswered questions, but there was also meaning. And somewhere, far away, a small town remembered the boy who left and the man who returned. While the man moved forward, carrying the past with care, not as a burden, but as a guide, the work grew slowly, like roots spreading under the ground. It did not make noise. It did not ask for attention, but it reached places the man never expected. Children from different towns began writing letters. Some were short and careful. Others were messy and full of emotion. They spoke about fear, confusion, homes where no one listened, schools where they felt invisible. The man read every word. He answered each letter with patience, choosing words that felt honest and warm. He never told them his full story. He did not want to become a symbol. He wanted to become a steady presence. Someone who would not disappear. The nanny helped him organize everything. She labeled folders, sorted letters, reminded him to rest. Though her body slowed, her mind stayed sharp. "You don't need to carry everything alone," she reminded him often. "I know," he said. "That's why you're here." One afternoon, a small group of young people visited him. They were nervous, standing near the door, unsure of what to expect. He welcomed them simply, offered tea, and listened. They talked about mistakes, about anger, about feeling like the world had already decided who they were. He spoke quietly. "People may judge you," he said, "but you don't have to live inside their judgment." Those words stayed with them. Over time, a small center formed. Nothing official at first. Just a place where people could sit, talk, and feel safe. No rules written on walls. Only respect. The nanny watched from a chair near the window, her eyes full. "This feels familiar," she said one day. He smiled. "Because you taught me how to do this." Seasons changed, so did the man. Responsibility shaped him further. There were days he felt tired beyond words. Nights when doubt crept in. On those nights, he remembered the boy he once was. Quiet, afraid, waiting for someone to stay. That memory guided him forward. News from the old town arrived now and then. The school had improved. A few families received help during difficult times. The changes were small, but steady. He never took credit. One winter morning, the nanny fell ill. Not suddenly, but clearly enough to cause concern. He stayed beside her day and night. The roles reversed fully now. "You don't have to worry," she whispered once. "You already gave me everything." He held her hand. "You're not done yet," he said. Recovery was slow, but she grew stronger. The experience reminded him of something important. Time is fragile. From then on, he chose moments more carefully. He took breaks. He laughed more. He allowed himself joy. The center grew into something larger. Volunteers joined. Teachers offered time. People who once felt lost now helped others find their way. One young person asked him a question he did not expect. "Why didn't you give up?" He thought for a long moment. "Because someone believed in me before I believed in myself," he said. The question spread. Others asked it too. His answer never changed. As years passed, his story traveled quietly. Not through headlines, but through lives touched. The town he left long ago spoke of him with respect now. Not as a miracle, not as a legend, but as proof that people can return different. One evening, as the sun set, he and the nanny sat together, watching shadows stretch across the floor. "You came back twice," she said. He looked at her. "Twice?" "Once to the town," she said, "and once to yourself." He understood. The boy who left had been scared. The man who returned had been healed. The person he became chose to stay for others. That was the real change, and it continued. Quietly, long after the story ended, time did not stop after everything that had already happened. It rarely does. Life continued to move forward, not in big jumps, but in small, steady steps. The man woke each morning with a quiet sense of duty, not the heavy kind that presses on the chest, but the calm kind that guides the day. The center became a place people trusted. Some came only once, just to talk. Others returned again and again, slowly learning how to speak honestly about their fears. The man greeted everyone the same way, without judgment, without rushing them. He remembered what it felt like to sit in silence, waiting for someone to notice. He kept his routine simple. Early mornings, work during the day, evenings at the center, or at home with the nanny. He learned that balance mattered. Helping others did not mean forgetting himself. The nanny's presence remained strong. Even as her body reminded them both that time leaves marks on everyone. She moved slower now, rested more often, but her words still carried weight. People listened when she spoke. They could sense the calm she carried. Sometimes she sat quietly while conversations happened around her. Other times she shared short stories from her own life. She never made herself the center of attention. She simply offered truth when it was needed. The man often watched how people responded to her. He saw respect, not pity, gratitude, not obligation. It reminded him that love does not fade when it is real. One afternoon, a young boy arrived with his guardian. The boy barely spoke. His eyes stayed on the floor. The man recognized that look immediately. It was the same one he once carried. He did not push the boy to talk. He offered paper and a pencil instead. The boy drew quietly while others spoke. Before leaving, the boy slipped the drawing into the man's hand. It showed two figures standing side by side. That night, the man could not sleep. He sat by the window, thinking about how cycles repeat, how pain passes from one generation to the next unless someone stops it. He thought about the town he came from, about how easy it would have been for his story to end differently. The next day, he started planning something new. Not large, not public, just something steady. He began training a few trusted people to listen the way he had learned to listen, to stay, to show up even when it was uncomfortable. This isn't about saving anyone, he told them. It's about not walking away, they understood. As months passed, the center no longer depended only on him. That was important. He did not want it to fall apart if he stepped away. The nanny noticed the change. "You're letting go," she said one evening. "I'm learning how," he replied. She nodded. "That means you've done it right." Letters from different places arrived more often now. Some were from people he had helped directly. Others were from those who had only heard of the work. He answered as many as he could. When he could not, he made sure someone else did. One letter came from the old town again. This one was different. It spoke about a child who reminded people of him, quiet, withdrawn, watching from the edges. The man folded the letter. Carefully, he did not rush to act. He thought deeply. Then he reached out, offering guidance, not instructions. He had learned that people grow best when they are trusted. The nanny watched him write. "You still carry that place with you," she said. "It made me," he answered. There were evenings when loneliness visited. It did not stay long. He had learned how to welcome it without letting it settle. He often walked alone through familiar streets. People greeted him warmly. Children waved. Adults nodded with quiet respect. No one treated him like a hero. That suited him well. One afternoon, a letter arrived that made him pause longer than usual. It was from someone much younger, someone who had never met the nanny. "Never seen the early struggles," the letter said. "I don't know why, but when I come here, I feel safe." The man held the paper for a long time. Safety, he realized, was the greatest gift anyone could offer. He replied with care, reminding the writer that safety begins when people choose kindness for themselves too. As time moved forward, his body reminded him that years had passed. His steps slowed. His hands ached some mornings. He welcomed these signs with acceptance, not fear. He began mentoring quietly, not formally. Just conversations, walks, shared meals. "You don't have to become someone else," he told them. "Just become someone who stays." Those words spread more than he ever knew. One day, while walking near the center, he saw a young adult standing nervously by the door. The look was familiar, unsure, waiting. He approached gently. "You don't have to rush," he said. The young adult looked relieved. That moment felt like a full circle. The man returned home that evening feeling calm. He sat by the window as the sun set. Colors filled the sky. He thought about how many sunsets he had watched in silence over the years. He did not regret a single one. Later that night, wrote again, not for memory this time, but for release. He wrote about gratitude without guilt, about love without obligation, about how some people shape us not by staying forever, but by teaching us how to stay for others. When he finished, he folded the paper and placed it with the others. Life did not end with a dramatic moment. It continued quietly, the way meaningful lives often do. The man understood something deeply now. Being remembered was never the goal. Being present was. And as long as people chose to stay with themselves, with others, with hope, the story would never truly end. The man's days grew quieter, but they did not feel empty. Silence had become a friend, not something to fear. He learned how to sit with his thoughts without needing to escape them. Morning light still mattered to him. He watched it move across the walls, slow and gentle, like time itself. He did not count years anymore. He counted moments. A shared smile, a calm conversation, a walk that did not rush him. The center continued to grow in its own way. It no longer depended on one person. That truth filled him with peace. He had once feared becoming unnecessary. Now he understood that being unnecessary was a sign of success. People still came to him for advice, though less often. When they did, he spoke simply. "Do what you can," he told them. "Then let go." Some understood immediately. Others needed time. He never pushed. One afternoon, he found himself sorting through old papers. Letters, notes, small reminders of a long life shaped by choice rather than chance. He read slowly, not to relive the past, but to honor it. There were moments when emotion rose unexpectedly. He let it pass through him. Tears no longer embarrassed him. They felt honest as his strength faded. His awareness sharpened. He noticed things others often missed. The way people avoided silence. The way kindness changed a room without making noise. He spent more time near the window now. The chair remained there, unchanged. Sometimes he imagined the nanny sitting beside him, not speaking, just sharing the moment. That thought brought comfort, not sadness. One evening, a visitor arrived unannounced. Someone who had once been helped by the center, now older, more confident. I just wanted you to know, the visitor said. I stayed because you stayed. The man smiled. That was enough. After the visitor left, he felt a deep calm settle over him. There was nothing left to prove, nothing left to fix. He rested more often. Nights grew longer. Sleep came gently without fear. In his final reflections, he did not think of achievements. He thought of presence, of showing up when it mattered, of choosing patience over pride. He understood now that life did not need to be loud to be meaningful. When the end came, it came softly. The town remembered him not with statues or speeches, but with habits passed on quietly. With doors left open a little longer, with people choosing to stay when leaving would have been easier. The center remained. The chair by the window remained, and the lesson continued, living in ordinary lives. Stay sometimes, that is everything.